looks like everyone is here or who's going to come. So let's get going. Ready. So, okay, so this topic is about how and why to use GitHub for your research. All the slides, as well as all the images and all the citations that we use in this paper and this project are on this GitHub already. So if you go to this GitHub link, github.com/learnbioinformatics/whyusegithub, all the slides are there. Everything's here. Also, this talk is being recorded. It probably is going to be too big to put on GitHub, but we can put it on our website. So at least it'll be on the website. I realize now our website link isn't on this slide, but it's learnbioinformatics.git.land.omref.org. Maybe Christopher, if you don't mind posting that in the chat, that'd be great. The link to our regular website. Sorry about that. But anyways, this topic is about how and why to use GitHub for your research. So I want to just open with sort of a kind of a case study, I guess, about why you should use GitHub. So here's a very recent paper. This is April 12th, 2022. So pretty new paper from Science Signaling, high profile journal. I'm sure this paper is great. I'm not really picking on the research in this paper. I'm sure the research is fine from this paper. The SARS-CoV-2 spike protein induced cell fusion activates C-gas sting pathway and the interferon response. I'm sure it's a fascinating topic, but here's a snippet from their methods section. So the RNA-seq data analysis section of their methods says raw sequencing reads were curated as previously described. Briefly, the FASTQs were subjected to adapter trimming to remove low-quality reads and short reads. All clean data were mapped to the human genome, GRCH38, using HiSat2 version 2.1.0 with default parameters. BAM files were sorted with BAM samples 1.9, and so on. The problem is there's no code anywhere in this paper. And if you go to the link that they reference here, the reference 25, there's no code in that link either. And so it just goes, you can't reproduce this is my point. Like there's no way for you to go back and actually rerun this. This is a pretty standard RNA-seq analysis here that they've done. But still, the point is that there's no code, so you can't reproduce it. It's a problem for not only reproducibility, but also usability. So just break that down for a second. So usability versus reproducibility. So you have usability. First of all, there's local and global. So locally, can your own lab reproduce, you use this code and build upon it, especially if, let's say, the code writer leaves. So if someone who wrote the code for this project leaves the lab, can your lab still use the code? That's essential. You need to be able to still do that. And then globally, can anyone across the web download, use, and build upon your code? And then in addition, reproducibility. So can your own lab reproduce your own work? And if you don't have your code saved in an organized way, then the answer is probably no. And then same with globally. So globally, can you reproduce your work? So this is a major issue in science in general, is reproducibility is kind of a problem. So one area where we can help is we can provide code that is reproducible for people. And so can anyone find your raw data and reproduce your analysis? It makes it so much easier if you use a code repository like GitHub. So all four of these problems can be solved by using GitHub, and that's my argument for this talk. So what is GitHub and what is Git? So Git is a program that is a version control software that lets you save checkpoints of your work. It runs locally on your system. GitHub is one of many, but it's one of the most popular online homes for your Git projects. So really, these are two different programs that work together. And we're going to talk about both in this talk. So what some of the benefits or features of using Git and GitHub, the main advertised feature is the version control, and we're going to talk about that. It's also very easy to collaborate either within your own lab or across labs or across the world, or it's also easy to share your code. It makes reproducibility a lot more possible because you have code that's publicly available. And also it helps you organize your code because you're publishing it out there, and so it sort of helps you organize it. And also you don't have to save a bunch of extra versions. So let's dive a little bit deeper into each of these four topics. So version control maintains old versions of your code, and it helps you, it shows you specifically what has changed between each version, which is very nice. And also it means you don't have to save versions over and over again because you can version control them and look back much more easily. Collaboration. So GitHub makes it easy for lab members to work together or for external collaborators to work with you. You can control the access with ease. So if you need to set a private repository that only select people have access to, that's not a problem, or you can do public access. You can also, so code organization, each change is documented. So that's nice because you don't have to save files over and over and over again with different names, slightly tweaked names. If you make one small edit, you can just make the edit, commit the change, and then it's saved in your version history. And also publishing code helps you think about the organization of how other people are going to read your code, which is a good thing in general, because then it helps your reproducibility as well. So, and for reproducibility, your repositories can easily be shared, which means your code is available for people. So it's amazingly common for papers to have no code or minimal code or highly unorganized code that no one can use. And so using GitHub helps you solve a lot of those problems. So if your files look like this is a manufactured example from this project. I copied and pasted these files and changed the name, but this is such a common thing that we see all the time, is files that look like this. We have a date, which is fine, and then the name, which is fine, and then we made an update on the next day, and we made an update on the next day, but actually we made 2 updates on that day, and we want to keep both, so we name it version 2, and then here we have, okay, we finished, we think, so we named it version 2 final. But wait, I sent it to Christopher, and sorry, Christopher, I'm throwing you under the bus here. Sent it to Christopher, and he made some edits, and then I resolved those edits, and then I made some edits, and so on, and so on, and so on. And these files get out of control quickly, and it's hard to keep track of what changed between them. And this is really kind of a mess. And so if your files look like this, you need version control, I will say. That's, yeah. Okay, one caveat about GitHub. So it's not a place to store large data sets. So it's not meant to store large data sets. It's really made for code analysis or maybe small files. So for example, this PowerPoint presentation is saved on GitHub. It's small enough to fit under the minimum requirements. And we'll talk about the details once we get to the detailed section here, but this is sort of just a high level overview for now. If you need local data storage at ORMRF, at least we have the ORMRF data server, and also we have Dropbox, and we have unlimited storage in Dropbox. And then we also have the O3 archive for long-term data storage. And if you want to use O3, talk to Stuart. He can get you set up on that. And then for sharing data sets for publication, you really need to store your data sets in one of the public repositories like the SRA or the Gene Expression Omnibus. There's also many more, the Imaging Data Commons, there's a whole bunch. And so if you go to this link, there's a whole bunch of NIH affiliated data repositories for all kinds of different types of data. Hopefully we're going to do a talk on submission to some of these databases at some point later on, but for now, when you publish your data, you have to store it somewhere. And it can't really be GitHub, because GitHub is not a place, it's not made to store large data sets. Okay, so really all that's great, but why should you even use GitHub in the first place? This is my argument, is the biggest reason is your code is easy to share for publication, which makes it more impactful. So when people read your work, they can find your code, download it, make edits to it, improve it, push your research further, which improves your impact, improves the impact of your work, and also hopefully improves your citations. At least that's the hope. Okay, and the second reason I think is that the NIH is updating their data sharing guidelines January 25th, 2023, which is coming up pretty soon. And then so part of those guidelines is you have to specify how you plan on sharing your data and your analysis and code when you apply for your grants. So if you're applying for an NIH grant, you have to specify very clearly in a detailed document how are you going to share your data and your analysis and code. And so if you have a plan and know how to use GitHub, it automatically bumps up your likelihood of getting NIH funding. At least that's what it seems. So it's not going to hurt you to use it, and it improves reproducibility, improves impact. And so I think it's kind of a no-brainer in my opinion, but it's not a no-brainer if you don't know how to use it. So how do we actually use it? So that's what we're going to talk about next. So before I go on, I want to answer any questions, make sure everyone's doing okay. So if you have any questions, now's a great time to ask about high-level stuff. Why should you use GitHub? All that stuff. So I'll wait for maybe a minute. Maybe if anyone has any questions, you can just unmute yourself too. I want this to be casual if we can. And so please feel free to interrupt me at any point as well. I should have started with that. So I'll wait. And also, if you want to post your question in the chat, if you're feeling shy and don't want to say anything, or if you guys all are experts on GitHub already, know everything about it, then we can move on. But I know there's questions out there. Okay, while people are thinking about that, I will proceed for now, and then please interrupt me if you have any questions. So for the setup, this is kind of the demo section. We're going to do a setup and then a how to use Git. So for setup, okay, okay, Michelle has a question. Is it better to have an account associated with your work email or your personal email? That's a really good question. Thank you, Michelle. It probably depends on what your goals are. So at least you can set it up with both. So that's one nice thing, is you can actually have multiple emails associated with your GitHub account. So yeah, it really is fine either way. So if you want credit for your personal effort, so people can see your public contributions on your GitHub profile. And so if you're, I don't know, trying to get a job as a coder or something later on, it might be nice to have those credits later on. You know, it shows you're productive and so on. It's just a different type of metric than papers. If you have a lot of GitHub contributions, then people say, oh, wow, okay, you've got a public presence on GitHub, which is always a good thing. But you can associate with both emails, actually. So my account right now is set up with both. So if I make a contribution, you know, on my own, unrelated to work, then I get still credit. But if I make a contribution here at work, I also still get credit. So is it better to have one or the other? I think it's best to have both, is my answer. Christopher, you want to jump in and say anything about that? Feel free. Okay, but this is just the agenda. So we're going to cover creating a GitHub account. Hopefully that's pretty self-explanatory, but you just go to the website and set up an account, but we'll go through it. We're also going to create our first remote repository on GitHub. We will install Git locally if you need to. This is a Windows only thing. We will set up SSH keys, and this is going to be the most technical part of the talk probably, but it's very beneficial and helpful. And I'll walk you through totally step by step. And then we're going to learn how to use Git. So our first setup will be git config. So this is still part of setup technically, but it's using Git. Then we will clone our remote repository down to our local system. We will add files to it so that we can start version controlling them. And then we will learn a little bit more of the basics. So this is not advanced Git topics by any means. We'll just cover the essential commands for basic uses. So we're not going to cover branching, if you're familiar with that, really at all. We've got links to tutorials and so on at the end if you want more advanced topics. So a tool says, is this specifically for storing and sharing codes? Is there any other purpose of using this? Well, beyond the reproducibility argument, which I think is really important, is should you, let's see, is it specifically for storing and sharing code? Mostly yes, but you can store and share other things, like for example, my PowerPoint here. Oh, Christopher says, yeah, some authors use it for their books. That's true. And Tim Griffin, yes, I am recording this. So sorry about that. Forgot to mention that, but yes, we are recording. So I will post the recording of this later on the website as well. So we've got slides posted, and the recording will be posted as well. Sorry, Tool, if that doesn't answer your question fully. Maybe you feel free to ask a follow-up or clarifying question. Mostly GitHub is for sharing code or analysis type scripts. That's really the main purpose. But there can be other uses as well. Okay, so I'm going to switch over to a half screen kind of thing here. So we will sort of go half and half here. So setup, I'll open my website. Okay, so first we're going to create a GitHub account. Hopefully you've already done this. If you're following along, you can go to github.com and then click sign up. So I already have an account, so I'm just going to sign in, but you can follow the prompts. It's really just an email and a password, and then you have to verify your email too. And so in my case, so here I've used my regular work email. So there you go. You can email my personal email if you want. And then sign in. Okay, so this is my homepage. It looks a little weird because it's half screen, but yours might look a little different. So on the left, I've got some kind of reference slides. So the slides will be posted and the video will be posted. And so, but here, the next thing we're going to do is create a remote repository. So, so I'll go to my profile here. And then if you click on repositories, you can make a new repository. So we'll make a new example repository, and then I'll advance my slides. So here you can create a new repository. It on the left is if you're like full screen. This mine's sort of like half screen. So okay, so and this is sort of a reference for you, but so let's call this the example project. Okay, and then our description is how to make repo on GitHub. So the description can be short or concise. I would recommend having a repository. So you can create a lab account also. So right now I'm the owner of this repository. I'm also a member of the Learn Bioinformatics group on GitHub. So I could put this project into either of my personal or the work, my work repositories. So for now, let's put it in our work repositories. But that's one thing is you can have a lab account basically. And so all your lab members can contribute directly to your lab's account rather than their personal accounts, which is kind of nice. That way, if they leave the lab and so on, like you're not going to lose their GitHub work basically. Anyways, and so here you can control access, so public or private. If you're working on something that is pre-publication and you don't want your competitors to see it, you can just make it private. It's not a big deal. So private means you choose who sees and commits. So you can invite people to collaborate on your project and then they can see the code, but no one else can. Public means what it says, everyone in the internet can see it. So use with caution, but I would recommend if you can, at least at publication time, make your repositories public. That's part of the point of using this in the first place. So you can initialize the repository. You can import existing repositories or you can create a new one. We're creating a new one. So let's add a README file. And then we can add a git ignore file as well, which git ignore file we'll talk about lets you ignore certain files in your repository, but don't worry about that for now. And then the license, you can read more about the licenses, but for this project, we're not going to use a license, but there are different licenses which give permissions for, what people can and can't do with your code, and so on. And then I've changed my default setting to main. You can change that in your settings. It originally was master, and then which has problematic, it's a problematic terminology to begin with. And so in general, the field is changing to switch the default branch to main, which is not only shorter, but it's less problematic overall. So we've changed all our defaults to main, and you can do that in your settings. So here, okay, so we'll create this repository and this is what it looks like. So now we have our example project repository set up. It created a README file right here. And then the README is in Markdown, and so it's got like headers, and you can add lines and tables and links and all kinds of stuff and images and everything else. The Markdown language is actually really powerful, and so you can make beautiful READMEs that are very user-friendly, intuitive, and very helpful. And I would recommend making nice READMEs, especially when you publish your code. That way people can use your project. Okay, so that's creating. So now we have this repository that exists on GitHub. So now we need Git locally if you don't already have it. So for Windows users, you need to navigate to the Git for Windows. At least this is one way to do it. And I really like this program. It's pretty nice. But for Mac and Linux users, you guys are good. You already have Git pre-installed when you download the operating system. So it's already set up for you. So now we'll do the technical part, I would say, which is SSH key setup. So I'm going to open my, I'm going to clear this out. Sorry about that. So this is my Git bash. So if you want to find it, you just can search Git bash on Windows. This is for Windows. I'm on a Windows machine, of course. And so Mac, you will, sorry, it's a little small here with the split screen, but navigate to your applications folder, find your utilities, and then go to your terminal. Let me know if I need to slow down at all for anyone. I'm happy to go at the speed that people need. I don't want to rush through it too much. So, but anyways, it's in the applications folder. If you go to your utilities, it's in the terminal. So you need to open your terminal, basically. Or you can just search if you want. You can search your Mac for terminal, and it should pop up, hopefully. I can't demo it, but it should pop up for you. Okay. Sorry, I'm kind of monitoring chat a little bit too. So, all right. So our first step with the SSH key setup is when you log into your terminal here, it's going to default to your home directory. I think that's true on the Mac as well. So the first thing we're going to do, if you don't already have any SSH keys, we need to make a directory called .ssh. So that's the first command. So we make a new directory with the make directory command. Oh, what's up? Oh, Xiao Hong, I am lost. Can you please show me how to get to this point from create ... Okay. So let me see. Xiao, do you want to pop on the mic real quick and maybe explain where you are? Might be easier than chat. Try not to lose too many people, but also, yeah, everything will be posted as well. So hopefully, if you need to go back as well, you can.
I just don't know where, how you got there.
Okay.
I was still at creating something. So from that README stage, and how did you jump to here?
Oh, I see. Okay, sorry. So from here, you're saying, yeah. So, okay, we created our remote repository online. And so that's the online part.
That I did.
Great, okay. And then from here, then you need to either install Git. Are you on Windows?
Here.
Say again?
How do I get to this? I don't have this on my screen, so.
So just navigate to this website. Are you on Windows or Mac?
Bingo.
Okay, so for Windows, then you go to this link here and you can download and click download.
But I don't have that page at all. So how do I get there?
Really? Oh, let me see. Let's see. Okay, Git for Windows. Okay. Oh, really? I don't know. If you navigate with your website or your web browser to this website, it looks like the same, I think. And then you can download. And then the setup, actually, it's a good idea to go through this because there's quite a few defaults. So are you here or should I slow down?
Okay, so I clicked on the link. Now I need to download, right?
Yes. This is Git for Windows. Yeah, this is specific for Windows.
Will not let me install.
Great. It won't. Sorry, say it again. It won't let you.
Because OMRF has control of all software's installation. So if I won't be able to install this.
That's true. Potentially that's true. Although this doesn't actually require, I don't think it requires admin, but it might. And so maybe we'll just have to contact IT at some point. But to go through this real quick, you can. I'm not sure if you have write permissions to the program files without admin access, so it actually might require elevation, but you could change the location to somewhere that you do. You could change it to any of the users folders. So if you put them here, let's see, if you want, you could put it in even. I'm not sure where the best place to put it just as an install, but I don't know. You could put it somewhere in the users folder.
Or perhaps documents folder might
yeah, maybe just documents. Yeah. So you could put it somewhere like here where you do have write permissions as a user. So you don't need admin permissions necessarily to write to these folders. And then you could go through, and then in general, I would keep the default settings if you're going to install this on Windows. Unless you know kind of what you're doing, I would generally just keep the defaults. But there are plenty of other options you could change. And then, for example, you can override the default name branch for new repositories to main, which I think is a good idea. Maybe that's one of the few defaults I would change. And then you could just follow the recommended advice here, as well as here. Default probably is fine. Same with this one. I'm happy to talk about. And then this one is kind of a little funny. You could go either way here, but this changes the line endings of the file. Let's see. And then this is the default terminal, which is probably, or it's not the default terminal. This is a little bit better terminal versus you could use the Windows default terminal, which is a little bit worse. Let's see. I would leave those default. This one is very nice to have. The Git Credential Manager will help you not have to type your password and stuff quite as much. This is a really nice thing to actually have. And then, yeah. And then you can leave these off. These are defaults. And then you would hit install. And if it asks for admin permissions, then you would need
It
IT.
is not.
It did not? Okay.
Right. So if you click install, it will install.
Great. Okay. If you change that folder, great. Perfect.
A whole page of things that it goes nowhere. Yeah.
I'm sorry, say again. Yeah.
Yeah, I hit the install. It did install.
Great.
And then I have a whole page of blue things.
So now if you search in your Windows for Git Bash here, see if it pops up after the install is finished. Thank you for
license.
I'm sorry again.
You're asking for license.
I'm not sure. Well, we maybe can troubleshoot afterwards, if that's all right.
Okay.
I apologize. Yeah, I'm not sure about the license, so yeah, we'll have to look at it.
Are you?
Okay, so we'll proceed. So here we made our SSH directory. This is where we'll store our SSH keys. Then we will use the change directory function to go inside. And then once we're here, we can use this command SSH-keygen, which creates a new SSH key. And then it prompts you through this enter file in which to save the key. You can change the name or you can leave it default. It's defaulting to the ID RSA. And then the passphrase. So this is a passphrase to secure your SSH key. If you forget this password, there's no way to recover it, by the way. So you have to like completely delete the key and start over. So you can input a passphrase here and it won't show the code. And then you can input it again. And then it creates the key. Okay, so here we can do ls, which lists the files in this directory. So you have this ID RSA, and then you have an ID RSA.pub. So this is what's called your private key. This is what's called your public key. Your public key is shareable online, and your private key is not. So you do not want to share your private key. Treat it like a password. But your public key is visible online, and you can put it on websites, and it's fine. It's how it verifies. So you put your public key on a website, and then it checks basically your private key with an encryption. So we can look at our public key here. With cat, we'll print the content of the file, rsa.pub. So if you cat ID rsa.pub, it prints the content of this key. And this key looks kind of like a mess of letters and numbers, which is basically what it is. And then here we can highlight and copy it. So control insert on the command line will copy. So now we need to go back to the GitHub website and we need to add our, oh, I was there already. So here we need to go to our settings, and mine might look a little different than yours just because my window is sort of scrunched. But let's see, settings, SSH keys. Okay, and then down here, here's my regular SSH keys. I will add a new SSH key for this. Okay, and then you can give it a name. So I'll give it, yeah, this name. This is really just a descriptive name that helps you identify which computer and basically which computer is this SSH key on. And then you paste the entire contents of that public SSH key, including all this equals and then all the stuff at the end. And then that's it. So then you add SSH key and you're good. So now then you've added your key. Can you show me where the settings icon was again? Yes. Well, okay, mine is a little weird because I'm like on a sort of semi-scrunched screen. Yours might look a little different, but I went to this little 3-bar menu and then settings. Yours might be in the top right. If you click your little portrait icon, it might be in the top right. I'll make it full screen for a second. So here, if it's full screen, it's in the top right, settings. And then you can scroll down, SSH keys. Cool, yeah, top right. Yeah, it's just the full screen thing versus a half screen. Half screen kind of makes it a little weird. Let's see if I can lock it to the half screen again. There we go. All right, so, okay. And then, oh, we did that. Great. So we added new, so we already did that.
Nick, I have a quick question.
Go ahead, yeah.
What does the SSH does, like, so is it per terminal that you have set up Bluetooth for each of the computer terminals?
Little hard to hear. You're asking what does SSH key do?
Correct.
Okay, thank you. That is clear on the audio as well. The SSH key will basically confirm your identity that you are on this computer. It's like it's confirming that this computer is connecting to GitHub in this case. It's a very secure way of authenticating who you are. It's better than a password by a significant amount because your SSH key really cannot be hacked. It's almost impossible. Like these are heavily encrypted, and there's a whole field of cryptography that can explain probably better why SSH keys are so secure, but they're much more secure than a password.
So my question is, like, when I use another computer, I also need to create this SSH key
That's right,
for
yes.
that particular computer terminal.
That's correct, yes. So if you have a new computer or if you have a computer at home, so for example, on mine, I've got my regular OMREF SSH set up, and then I've got the one I just set up just now, and then I've got my home laptop as well. So all of my different setups have SSH keys associated with them.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Yep. And someone could do a more detailed dive on SSH keys probably if they want, but for now, let's move on and talk about Git and GitHub. Okay, so now we're ready to actually run some commands for on Git. So we'll go back here. So we made our SSH key. So you can run, I'm actually going to clear so we can go to the top of the screen here. Git config will help you set up GitHub, -- global, and then user.name, oops. And then double quotes, and then your username. And that will set your Git username. So whenever you make a commit or change or anything with Git on this terminal, it will know who you are. And then let's see, git config -- global user.email. And then you can use your email that you use to sign up with GitHub. In my case, Gmail. Okay. And then you can look at what you've set and see if there's any typos or anything. -- global. This git config -- global -- list will tell you what your username is and what your email is. And it uses this information whenever you make a commit, so it knows who you are. Really, that's the main reason why you need to set this up. Okay, so that's git config. All right, so now what we're going to do is we're going to clone that remote repository that we made on the website down to our local system. So to do that, we will go back to the web and we will go to our GitHub. And I'll go to my account. Let's see. I need to go to actually my, I made it on these are all my repositories. Let's see. I need to go to the actual Learn Bioinformatics GitHub because I made it on the Learn Bioinformatics, but let's see. I'm going to make it full screen because it'll be a lot easier to find. Because down here, there's the organizations. And you can just click on that. Okay, so here we made the example project. Okay, so we navigated to our, sorry, and it's kind of hard to lock it to the right side of the screen. There we go. So we made our repository here previously. Man, the interface here is kind of weird on the split screen. I apologize. So normally I'll make it full screen again. So you go to this code button, this bright green code button, and then now there's this SSH link, and you can copy this link. There's also the HTTPS link, which you can use, but it requires personal authentication tokens now. GitHub stopped supporting password support when you push to repos. So anyways, it's kind of complicated to set it up. Honestly, SSH keys were easier to set up than the HTTPS in my opinion. So that's why we went with that. But anyways, you just click that link and then you can go back to your terminal. And then we are going to navigate. First of all, I'm going to navigate to a place on my computer so that I can actually put this in a logical place, not just randomly. Let's see. So cd space dot dot will go up one directory, and then ls lists the current contents of that directory. So this is like my Windows home directory. So I can go inside my Dropbox, and then inside Dropbox, I've got my bioinformatics training center. And then I know here I've got a Git repos. So I have an old example repo. I'm gonna see if that's empty or not. Okay, I can change directory into it. Okay, this is one I was using for testing, so I'm gonna remove it. So remove it -rf. This removes a repo completely and everything inside of it. Only use this unless you really want to delete something. Okay, sorry. Okay, so right. So here now let's create a new repo. So we'll use, I'm going to clear. So you can navigate with CD and then to navigate wherever you want to put it. And now I'm going to git clone and paste that link. So paste the link I copied from the web. And I'm going to clone into my example project. And then it says, this key is not known. It's talking about the authenticity of host github.com is not known because I've never connected to it before on this with this computer. It's because I just deleted my previous. And so you just say yes. GitHub is a very legit website. And so now it remembers, and it'll remember that GitHub is a authenticated host. It's basically saying GitHub is asking for your SSH key. Are you sure that's what you want? Which the answer is yes in this case. So here we have now a directory called example project. And inside there's the README file. So now we have our first Git repository. So hopefully that wasn't too bad to set up. And all this setup is really only one-time setup. So once you set this up for a project, you can just put your files in here and then you can just use Git without any of the SSH key setup, so on. So once you set it up, it becomes much easier to use. Okay, but now let's like actually create some files. We want some files to put in here. So one thing to know about GitHub is that the files have a upload limit size. And so this is where the file size comes in. So if you're uploading from the command line like we're doing here, you have, the file has to be less than 100 megabytes. It gives you a warning, I think, if it's like 50 megabytes or maybe even bigger than 25. If you're on the web, if you're uploading from the web interface, it has to be less than 25 megabytes. So these are not humongous files. And then also the total repository needs to be less than 1 gigabyte is what they recommend. So you're not going to be storing like large image files here. You're not really going to be storing, large any files at all. Really, no real data files are you going to store on your GitHub because they don't want you to store more than even 1 gigabyte. And they say 5 gigabytes is very strongly recommended against storing less than 5. And you'll start getting emails from the GitHub support staff if your repos get too big. Okay, so let's create this file that we want to version. So I'm just gonna, on my text editor, I've got, this is oops. So I'm gonna say no there. So I have a Notepad++ as a text editor that I use for Windows. But you can use Notepad. If you're on Mac, you can just use any of the default text editors, I think. Maybe Christopher can speak to the default text editors on Mac. But we're just gonna make a little file called hello armor. So that's it. That's all it says. And let's save it. So file save as. So let's put this file into our bioinformatics training center, Git repos, our example project directory. So you'll notice already there's a .git file here or folder, which we'll talk about here shortly. But that's because this is a Git repository. So if you delete this .git folder, you're basically deleting the fact that it's a version control repository. So you really need to keep this .git folder. Okay, and let's call this hello omrf.txt. So that's the name of this file. All right, so now we have a file in our repository that we want to start version controlling. So anytime we make a change to this file, we want it to be tracked on our version control system. So before we talk about that, I'm going to full screen this and we'll do a quick detour about how Git works a little bit. So now that we've seen a little bit more, hopefully this will make a little bit more sense. Okay, so we have what's called the working directory. So the working directory is, it's actually everything inside your directory that's being tracked other than the .git directory. So the working directory is basically, well, really the working directory is mostly everything here, but basically all the changes you make are going inside your working directory. Then you have what's called the staging area. So the staging area is when you make a change to Git, it goes into this like kind of nebulous staging area, but the staging area is very helpful for staging things prior to a commit. And when you do a commit, which is one of the like verbs that you use in Git, your stuff goes inside the .git folder. So this .git folder is called your local repository. So everything is running locally at this point. We haven't connected at all to GitHub really. So GitHub is what's called a remote repository. So you have a local and a remote repository, and these are separate but related things. They're separate in the sense that you can make a change on the remote repository that doesn't affect your local files at all. And vice versa, you can make a change on your local system that doesn't affect your remote repository at all until you combine them. So here's a couple of the verbs that GitHub uses. So when you move a file from a working directory to the staging area, it's called git add. So when you add a file, so you have to add a file to the stage prior to it being committed. And then git commit is one of your key operations. So git commit takes files that are in the stage and moves them to the local repository, which is that .git folder. And then if we want to move the repository to the remote, we do what's called a git push. So git push takes your files in the local repository and moves them to the remote repository. Git pull does the opposite. It takes files from the remote repository and moves them to your local repository. And if you have edited, let's say, the same file on your local repository and the remote repository separately, or maybe somebody else edited that hello.txt file that we just made, let's say somebody else edited it and I tried to push, I would have to merge those two things. So you have to do what's called sometimes a git merge. So let's say you pull down a change that, let's say I made a change to your repository and you also made a change to that same file. When you do a git pull, it's going to ask you, okay, which of these two files do you want to keep and how do you want to merge them? And it's going to like basically go walk you through a sort of a step-by-step of what's different between them and what pieces of which file do you want to keep. And so it lets you merge files in a more intelligent way so that if somebody makes a change and you make a change, you can combine them in an easy-ish way, depending on how the complexity of the change. There's also a verb called git clone, which basically will take, which is what we've already used to pull the repository down. So that takes a remote repository and clones it completely. So that basically you have a copy on your system. Okay, so those are now we're going to talk about the real essential commands. So I want to stop real quick and make sure people are doing okay. I feel like maybe it's a little fast, but okay, is the local repository synchronizing automatically with remote repositories similar to Dropbox folders? Yeah, so similar to Dropbox folders, the local repo is not synchronizing automatically, no. You have to specify when you want a change to go through. So you have to git push, otherwise it will not synchronize. They're not meant to be synchronous necessarily. Basically, every time you make a change in your working directory, you should add it to your stage, commit it to your repo, and push it to the remote in general, if you want them to be in sync. So really, and these 3 steps are actually quite easy once you sort of get a feel for them. So it kind of seems like a lot, but really once you are using it, you'll find out like, oh, wow, this is actually really fast. I can make a change to a file, add it, git add, git commit, git push within, maybe 5 seconds. So it's really not bad. So I hope that answers your question on it. Yeah. Okay, so we already sort of did git clone by cloning this repository up here. That was this command up here. We get cloned, and then you provide either HTTPS link or a SSH link. That clones an existing repository from the web onto your local machine. Git add and git status. These 2 are really important. So we are going to now run git status. So, okay. So now here we're in our repository that we just made. And we made a change. I added this hello_omref.txt file. but it's not added yet to either my stage or my repository. So it's not being tracked. So it's called an untracked file. So this file was recently created in this directory, but it's not being tracked yet. So any changes I make to this are going to just be changed, and then I'm not going to version control them. So to version control it, we need to git add. So hello omref.text. So you can add. So you say get. You say the word get is saying I want to use the get program, and then add is the verb or the action that you want to take, and then hello omref. Previously, I ran the action get status, which printed a list of the status. So I can do get status again to see what changed. So now it's got this nice like happy green text that says, okay, you've added a new file called hello omref.text. You are about to commit this file, but you haven't committed it yet. So I can still revoke it from the commit if I need to with this git restore -- staged and then the file. So if I want to take it out, so if, let's say like, oops, I didn't actually want to I don't want to version control this file for some reason. I want to restore it. Okay, I can git restore my stage files, and then I want to restore hello omref. And that brings me back to it being untracked. But we want to add it. So let's get add hello omref. Great, and then we'll get status again. So now it's being tracked, or it's not being tracked yet. We haven't committed it. It's not being committed yet. That's the git restore. Git remove is the opposite of git add. It will remove files that have previously been committed and takes them out of the repository. So if a file was being version controlled, I can show this here in a minute, actually. But first we have to commit. So git commit. So here's the kind of one of the core operations that you need to run is git commit. And then if you run git commit by itself, it commits all the changes and offers you like a text editor to make a message. That's your commit message. But you can specify this -m flag, which will allow you to type a message. So we added, say we add hello omref. That's what we did. We added hello omref.text. And then it commits. And you might think, cool, like we're good, right? No, we're not, because we haven't pushed to the remote. So you might be good if this is all you want to do and you don't want to use a remote repository. You don't actually have to necessarily use a remote repository immediately, but you get more benefits if you do, because then it's easier to share and so on. So like right now, if I go to this example project and refresh, it's still just this file. That's it. That's because we haven't get pushed. So here, get push. And if we set our SSH keys up correctly, it will not complain and push properly. That's the goal. So without SSH key setup, it becomes more cumbersome to try to do the git push, because then it has to authenticate your user and so on, and then it gets complicated. But if you set the SSH keys up like we did before, it runs smooth and you don't have to worry. So that's push. So now let's check our website. So if we go here, we added hello.text. It looks like, oh man, this interface is really weird with smushed down. I'm gonna make it full screen so we can see all our files here. Okay, so I added hello omref.text 1 minute ago, and now this repository has 2 commits. The initial commit when I first created the repository, and then this addition of this text file. Cool. So we have a file that's being tracked. Let's get push. Okay, let's say you can edit files technically on the website too. So let's say I edited this README file. Let's say make it fit. I'm gonna save this, and here I'm gonna make a commit directly onto the remote repository. So the remote repository again is totally separate from my local repository. So here I update readme.md. I don't need to have an optional extended description for this case, because if you have a complex change, and let's say you made a lot of changes to your code, you can add a longer description here, which is actually kind of nice. And then I'm going to commit directly to my main branch. All right, so now we're back. So this file is now not the same as what we have locally. So if we go back to our there we go. If we go back here, and we look at our files. So we have our two files, readme.md and hello.omref.txt. Cat will print the contents of the file. If we look at this, it is not synchronized. So in other words, now we have, this file is out of date compared to our remote. So if we do git status, okay, so here is where we need to use git pull. So git pull will take changes from the web and add them to our local repository. And since there was no like conflicts, it just went ahead and did it. But if there was a like conflict, let's say line 3 had 2 different messages in it. Let's say I changed it remote and local. It would ask you to merge them. I can show that if people want me to show that. Okay, so now our files have the updated. So let's look at the README. So generally, when you are working with a collaborative group and people are making changes to a repository, you would start with a git pull, because git pull will check and see, okay, in my case now it's already up to date, so it's good. But if someone makes a change and pushes it to the remote and you start working and start making changes before you pull, it can get more and more messy to try to do the merge. And so it's easier if you just start with a clean and just do a pull before you start working. Okay, so that's the core commands that I wanted to cover for this workshop, but there are many more. So like you can work with what's called branches, and there's lots and lots of great tutorials on branching. So here's a couple links. This YouTube video is really nice just for covering sort of some of what we talked about and also a little bit more. And this Learn Git branching is really nice. It's a interactive tutorial, so it's actually really cool. I guess I can show it off for a second maybe. If you want to learn how to do branching, this one is actually quite nice. It will sort of walk you through kind of almost like a game, and gives you nice graphics. Skip through some of this is all helpful if you're actually trying to use it, and it shows you graphics and what's happening and the branching and so on. So you have really nice interactive, and it challenges you with these challenges, and it asks you to basically create this repository structure. And if you read the instructions, it walks you through how to do it. So that's actually kind of cool. And then GitLab, this tutorial is from GitHub itself. This is they have an introduction to GitHub. This is sort of a class that you can join that's free. Walks you through some of the basics. This YouTube video I'll show. It's from Corey Schaefer. Oops, sorry. Corey Schaefer, he's an awesome YouTube educator on all things coding and Python and Git and so on. I really recommend this video as well. And then also this document here, how to write a great commit message, is really nice. Walks you through the rules, 7 rules of a great commit message, which I would recommend. And can you add the Learn Bioinformatics GitHub link to the chat? Certainly. Oh, the GitHub, sorry. Okay, well, I'll add both. Oh wait, is the website already in the chat? I think it might be. I'll add it to the chat too. This one. Okay, so our GitHub on our Learn Bioinformatics is a little bit sad right now because we are working on, so there's actually multiple different types of repositories. There's like GitHub is one of them, and Bitbucket is another one. So I would be remiss to mention that OMRF has a Bitbucket account, basically a private Bitbucket account that is essentially the same as GitHub. Bitbucket and GitHub are owned by different companies. But here we have projects, and we have a bunch of projects we're working on just with our own group. And so mostly we've been working here, but we're trying to convert them over to our GitHub to make it GitHub our main. Just because GitHub is a little easier, in my opinion, to access, more people use it, more people are familiar with it, and so on. So we are working on moving our Bitbucket repositories over to GitHub. But yeah, that's there. And then also the links to these slides are actually here already. So this is the repository I've been working on. I'll make it full screen. this is the repository we've been working on for this project, for this talk. So all the slides are here. So the PowerPoint slides are here. And notice we only have one file, which is super nice. And if you go to the history, you can see all the commits that I was making as I was working on it. So I would make a small change and then update the commit. So that way I can go back and check. If I ever needed to, I can reference these old commits. So that's something else we didn't talk about, is how to restore files from old commits. You absolutely can. That's a little bit more advanced, but it's not too bad. Also, here we have the citations for all the papers and so on, about a few papers, and we have as well all the images. All the images are here, and so on. So with that, I want to mention as well, we added a 15-minute GitHub setup appointment to our website. If you need to, if you want to, sign up. If you need help, or if you got lost, we can absolutely help you get set up. I think it's valuable for your lab, valuable for you to learn how to use this, because in the future, I mean, code is not going away. We are becoming increasingly more dependent on our computers to do biology, and so the more you're able to be transparent with your code, the better I think your research can become. At least that's my argument. So if you want to help, if you need help doing any setup, we're here for you. On our website, which is linked here, I'll show you that. We have our booking calendar is available here, which you can go to and book an appointment. So we added the 15-minute GitHub setup here. And also, if you go to our website, all these slides are here as well. If you go to the code repos, you can find our GitHub link here as well. So that, and we are right at 1 o'clock. So really, really thank you everyone for attending. I want to please answer questions at this point. I mean, hopefully I've been trying to answer questions as we went, but I definitely want to pause here and address any questions that I have. Okay, thank you, Anna. Yeah. And feel free to unmute if you want. Yeah, and yeah, everything is going to be posted, so you can always go back and rewatch, or just look through the slides if you don't want to listen to me for another hour. So play it at two times speed. But that is all that I have today. I will stop sharing here.